All right. Most athletes think winning programs are built by coaches, but the truth is the players have just as much responsibility in this. Today's guest, Coach Art Sonato, has turned several different high school teams into playoff contenders, racking up over 500 wins along the way. He's helped athletes move on to college and even pro ball, and he even is a former MLB scout. And so in this episode, he's going to be breaking down what you can do as an athlete to create a winning culture, how to stand out to scouts, and how to really separate yourself from the pack. So, all right, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. So I want to start off a little bit broad on the culture piece is like, what does a winning culture look like? You know, from a coach's perspective, just in general.
I think the number one thing is anything that you don't like police or enforce that you condone it. Culture's not what you write down on paper. It's not what you write down on the wall. It's not posters you have in your locker room. Culture is what you do every day. It's the behavior you accept every day. Winners always find a way, and it, Nick Saban. I'm a big fan of Nick Saban, and he's someone that I looked up to for a long time. And when Coach Saban says it takes what it takes, that's the truth. It takes what it takes by the coaches, by the players, by the parents, by the booster club, by the community. It's winning's a total effort. The programs I've turned around, it's not just me, it's not just my assistant coaches, it's the kids, number one. Number one is the kids, but it's the parents and it's the administration and it's the community. When a team wins a championship, everybody contributes. Everybody.
Yeah. So then what is the athlete's role in that journey or in that creating and protecting that culture?
It's what they do on a daily basis when not just when I'm watching, but more importantly when I'm not watching. In Texas, we're very fortunate. We have athletic periods, so I get to see my kids every day for an hour, even during the off season. And I tell them that if all you're doing is what we're doing during this 1 hour athletic period, it's not enough. You're going to get left behind at some point. Maybe it's when you're a freshman. Maybe it's when you're a sophomore, junior, senior. Maybe it's when you get to college baseball. But it it takes once again, it takes what it takes. Guys in the big leagues, they all have talent, they all have ability, but it's their work ethic. They're continuing to get better. Why does a 20th round pick make it and a first round pick doesn't? It's their will. It's not because of their skill, it's their will.
Yeah. So I'm curious because this came up in a podcast I just did with a recruiting coach specific to baseball. Is you mentioned MLB, a very large percentage, like I think it's like was it 30% or something of MLB players are actually not from the US and they don't have the same resources as we do. What do you feel like that goes back to the work ethic and what you're doing on your own or behind the scenes? Like, do you feel like that's what separates, like, again, a lot of those athletes, even though they don't have the same access to resources as a lot of Americans do? Or what do you feel like contributes to that?
They have the will. They have the will to succeed. I'll just go ahead and say it. We're soft. The typical, and not everybody's soft, but like you can't be soft and make it off the island of Puerto Rico or the Dominican Republic or make it out of Venezuela. You can't be soft. You can't be soft mentally and you can't be soft physically. And those kids, they're not coddled at all. Whereas American kids, they get coddled by somebody. They're being coddled by somebody, whether it's mommy, daddy, their high school coach, their travel ball coach, the guy they go to for lessons. Somebody's going to coddle them at some point, and it's the kid that chooses not to be coddled, that chooses to work and will choose the path of most resistance instead of the path of least resistance, which sometimes that's a mistake that parents make. They want to, the term that used to be used was helicopter parent. I don't use that term anymore. Today, parents are more bulldozer parents. They want to blaze the path for their child, to make the path easier for them. And those kids often don't succeed. And teams, that try to take the path of least resistance, they don't succeed. They'll underachieve more times than
Mhm.
not.
Dude, bulldozer parent, that I mean, that is so accurate. I mean, when you think about all the complaints from high school travel, college coaches in general, where the parents are basically trying to bulldoze the way and then their athletes just kind of following along, it's like, well, it should be flipped. It should be parents guiding the athlete. But yeah, this is something too. Like I think even coaches at times can do this for players. I don't think it definitely doesn't happen that as often, but I do see a lot of athletes, I think because maybe they get it from their parents maybe, or there's some other thing going on that they feel like their high school coach should be helping them out doing XYZ whatever. And there's definitely roles that coaches have, but how can athletes take more ownership of their own development instead of waiting on the coaches?
I think, and I've told my athletes this for years, we show them how to take ownership of their own recruiting, of their own marketing. We show them how to do that. We do a seminar with them. My assistant coach was a recruiting coordinator at the junior college level for 4 years before he came to work with me at Brewer High School in Fort Worth, Texas. And at our fall parent meeting, which we've got one week after this, it's next week. He will get. I'll give him 10 to 15 minutes, and he will do a recruiting seminar with them just to get them started. And they know they can come to us, and we're going to help them. Now, does every high school coach help their players? Um, no, I know they don't. I know several high school coaches that have told me, "Well, it's not my job to do that." Well, and that's fine, but that's not how I've operated for the last 30 years. I've done everything I can to steer my players to the places that I think are the best fits for them, and they've got to be open-minded for that because not everyone can play at LSU. There's lots of great places to play college baseball at different levels, and for the high school kid, it's the hardest it's ever been since I've been in this business. It's the hardest it's ever been to find a place to play in college. It's never been harder than it is right now.
Yeah. Well, I feel like, where you're talking about the way that you help your athletes is it's not the helicopter or the bulldozer. It's again, you're giving them the tools, you're giving them like, okay, we're the experts here. We can guide you in this. But again, you still have to take ownership and put in the work. What are some things that you see the athletes that do this really well, that take the ownership? Like what are some of the things that they do specifically around the recruiting side of things?
We help them put together a recruiting portfolio. All their all their vital measurements, the data points, exit velo, arm strength, 10-yard dash time, 30-yard dash time. I think the 60-yard dash is a dinosaur. That's just my opinion. Um, we try to focus on the 10 and the 30-yard dash, and then to use as much game video as possible. I don't evaluate our kids by what they do in the cages. The cages are just a small part of it. I want to, it's game video. And we tell them don't just include your best swings, include bad swings, include bad at bats, and then put the next at bat in there and show the scout or show the college recruiting coordinator that you know how to make an adjustment. That means a whole lot to them. Um, we don't waste time with our high school statistics and our summer statistics because you know the the college coach doesn't know the pitching that you're facing.
Mhm.
I would send them like I would suggest to send them game video from like in our district, the district that we play in, Alito. They've got Alito High School. They were the state champions this year, and they have 4 Division I arms. And I would tell our kids those are the at bats we're going to put in your highlight video. We're not going to put um, at bats in a highlight video for you from a game that we won 20-0 and we faced guys throwing 72.
Yeah.
uh, Whether or not you got hits in those at bats, that's what those coaches want to see. They want to see at bats against those kind of pitchers. um, so that when they're making their own videos, especially from the summer, you know it, the trained eye can see the kind of pitcher on the mound that you're facing, and they can see the arm speed. I don't need a radar gun to tell me how hard somebody's throwing. I can watch somebody throw and I can guess what they're throwing within 2 or 3 miles an hour, and that's all I need.
Mhm.
Um, and there's college coaches that have been doing it better and longer than I have, so you're not going to fool them.
Right.
And that's what I try to tell my freshmen. You're not going to fool us. You think you're going to fool us, but you're not going to fool us, and you can't hide. We're going to find you. The ball's going to find you at some point. So, um, just when you just have to know who you're marketing yourself to, basically, and we walk them all through that.
Yeah. Well, and that's, I mean, know who you're marketing to. That's a life hack basically. That's a life skill because it's like you got to know who you're talking to and yeah, know what they know or not yeah.
You have to be able to read the room,
Mhm.
and right, that's exactly right. It is a life skill. And whenever I tell the kids, when we're teaching you something that's, if we're teaching you something that's baseball, chances are it's more than just a baseball lesson.
Mm.
It's this is all way more than about baseball. It's about getting you guys ready for the rest of your life. Um, I don't set out every year trying to figure out how many of these guys are going to make the big leagues, or how many of these guys are going to play Division 1 or Power Four Division 1. You know, the most important thing to me is how many of these guys that they're not all going to be able to do that, but they can all go on to be successful adults, and that's what we really want for them to do is go on to be successful adults. Um, and we try to teach them the work ethic of, in baseball that they're gonna be able to carry on for the rest of their lives.
Mm. Yeah. No, I love that. So when you are talking to the college coaches, what are like the top 5 things that they're asking you about your athletes, when we talk about the recruiting side of things?
They wanna know if I think they could play at that level, because if the answer is no, then we're not gonna waste each other's time anymore. Um, they wanna know what kind of student he is. They wanna know how does he practice? What are his practice habits? Is he a leader? Um, does he stay after and get extra work? Does he get to practice early to do early work? Um, things that they can't see if they go watch him, at a tournament during the summer. And that's why I always tell my guys when you step out of when we step off the bus, I can control that. Like, we're gonna be in uniform, shoes on, ready to go. So during the summer, they're not around me, so I try to tell them, "Don't walk up to a field in shorts and slides. When you get out of the car, you are fully dressed.
Mhm.
You know, you dress the part. You dress for the job that you want." Um, and, so those things, people call them little things. I don't think there's any such thing as a little thing. Everything matters because it's when you're spending your parents are spending all that money for you during the summer. Everything you do is every time you take the field's an audition, and everything you do is part of that audition. It's part of that job interview, and you've got to put your best foot forward every day with everything you do. There's no little things and there's no days off, and that's the mentality we try to ingrain in them.
Yeah, dude, I love that, and yeah, no, it's so true on the it's they're not little things. I mean, I guess they're more subtle things might be a word, but subtle to us,
Yeah.
I guess, but it's not subtle to the obviously the coaches, because like you said, like you in the 5 things you listed, none of those were their stats or their whatever. It was their character basically. It was a lot of the behind the scenes things.
They'll see that when they watch you play. If you've got the tools, they'll see the tools. They're not gonna that when they talk to me, we don't talk about tools. They already know this kid throws, 89 miles an hour. Um, they know all that. They're just trying to get the background information, the stuff that they can't see, to make sure that they're making the right investment. And it's not a kid that's going to go out there and get into trouble and that they're going to have to babysit. They're not babysitters, they're college baseball coaches.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm trying, that's what I want to send them. And if I embellish a kid, or if I'm not truthful about a kid and that kid goes there and falls on his face and fails, and then that coach is saying, well, everything Sonato told me was wrong about this kid. Well, he's not going to call me anymore about the kids that I coach, or just kids in the area that they know that I've seen.
Mhm.
Um, and because they do that. I mean, it's not just my kids that they'll, the guys that I know and I've known for a long time, they'll ask me, hey, what do you know about this kid at this school? Or I saw you played them, tell me about that kid. How did he act? Did he go 3 for 3? How did he act? How did he carry himself on the field? Was he a good teammate? Those are the things that they're going to ask me about a kid that doesn't play for me.
Mhm.
And if I tell them, well, I want that kid on my team because he does everything right, then that's what they want to hear.
Yeah.
I'm not going to bash a kid. I'm not going to tell them, well, you don't want to be part of that kid. I can word it to where I'm not going to bash that kid, but I'll get my message across to the coach that he needs to do his homework.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because once again, I'm not going to lie about a kid if I don't think the kid can play there, or if I don't think the kid's going to, act the right way. I'm just not going to do that because my reputation means way more than that.
Yeah. No, 100%. And this is just like one more example. I've had several examples recently of like a few college coaches where they talk about, yeah, coaches talk. They don't just talk about their players, they talk about other players. Like some of the
For
college
sure.
coaches, they'll be like, hey, did you hear about this kid? Or did this kid reach out to you and say this, that, like all that kind of stuff. Like coaches are listening to everything and they are also communicating a lot of those things to other coaches, whether that be high school to college, college to high school, all college to college, yeah, all the things. So yeah, I think that's a huge reminder for the athletes.
Yeah, the coaching community is a very small world.
Mhm.
It's a very small world. Um, and yeah, coaches talk. They definitely talk. We talk to each other. So if they're looking at a kid that's crossed my path at some point, they may call me, and I tell our kids the same thing. Hey, you need to act right when we're playing these other teams because that coach may know somebody that's looking at you, and they're not going. They may not know me, but they know him, so they're going to call him. So it's all about how you represent your brand in everything you do, um, and that's just the way that's the way the world works today.
Yeah, no, so true. So I am curious though, like because you have the MLB scouting experience too, what's the same and what's different when we talk about like again what they're asking for, what they're looking for in an athlete?
I think with ML with major league teams, they're looking for the tools. You know, uh can he throw the ball? Can he field the ball? Can he run? Can he hit? And can he hit for power? So they're looking for those kind of tools. It only starts getting personal when a kid is like on someone's draft board. Um, like I've gotten phone calls or text messages from scouts of players of mine that are in college. So they look up the high school coach. What was he like in high? What kind of a kid is he? What, how did he? Was he a behavior problem? Were there those kind of issues? Was he a smart kid? Because now you're talking about those guys are investing, they're going to invest a lot of money in a player, not just in signing bonus and contract, but in player development. They're going to invest money, they're going to invest time and resources into developing that player. So they want to make sure they're making a good investment. The players to them are investments, and they want to make sure they're making the right investments. Um, college baseball is probably going. It's probably more in line with that over the last 5 years than it's ever been with NIL, because now colleges can make a financial investment in players as well, and that's where that's changed for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So I know that we can get into stories of like athletes who've done all these things really well. We can also talk about athletes who've done this not so well, but I feel like we don't talk enough about the examples of athletes who didn't do well and then they like fix it. And you're an example of like you've developed a lot of you've turned around a lot of programs, high school programs into playoff contenders. And so I know that over that time, you've probably had some athletes who initially were really tough and really did not really struggled, but then maybe turned their career around. They started to buy in, and they really gave themselves a new opportunity. Do you have any specific examples there?
Oh, yeah, I've definitely got a few,
Yeah.
but there's one, and I won't mention his name, but he'll know I'm talking about him when he sees this. I had a kid, um, I got to that school when he was a junior, and he was a good ball player, but he wasn't very coachable. And I started him on the junior varsity team that year, and he wasn't doing things the way that we wanted them done, so I had to make an example of him. So I started him on the junior varsity team, and then he's killing it on JV, which I kind of expected he would. So we bring him up to the varsity the second half of our district season, and he does real well for us. He's a different player. I mean, just attitude, everything. He learned his lesson. His senior year, he's the offensive MVP, gets a chance to play in college, gets a chance to play professional baseball. Um, and he's even been a hitting coach in the minor leagues for one organization. And he's really tearing it up right now on social media talking about hitting,
Mhm.
and he does a great job. And I've been on his podcast a couple times, but yeah, he was one of those guys that at first we butted heads, but then once once I figured out him a little bit more and he figured out me a little bit more, and that we were actually on the same mission, then it's been great, and it's been great with him the last 20 years. Um, just following his career and helping him when I can help him, and he helps me when I need help too, especially from the hitting side. He's come and talked to my teams, and he he's just a kid that if I would have given up on him in the beginning, it would have been a really bad decision on my part, because sometimes people have to learn the hard way. I've had to learn the hard way as a coach. I learned the hard way as a player. So these kids are no different than I was when I was a kid and when I was playing. Um, but it's in regards to with him and with getting kids to buy in. See, I don't like that term buy in. It's about getting them
Mm.
to believe in not just what I'm trying to teach them, but get them to believe in themselves, because that's the number one hurdle a baseball player faces is self-belief. And that goes back to me as a player. When I was at my best, I was confident. And when I was not at my best, I was not confident. And I didn't believe in myself, and I didn't believe in my abilities. And I felt like there was nobody there to help me with that. So that's something I definitely try to do for my players. And I tell them, I'll be the first one to chew your butt, but I'm going to be the first one out of the dugout to pat you on the back or you do something good too. It's it's both, and I think good coaches can do both. You can coach kids hard, and you can love on them hard too. And I think they need both. But you also have to get to know your kids. There's some kids you can't coach hard. You just can't. Um, they don't deal with it well. So those kids I've got to treat a little differently, and I've got to make sure I go and just, hey, look, this is what we're doing wrong. This is what we need to do, um, and I've got to present it in a little different way, uh, to certain kids, because not everyone can take hard coaching, and then there's other kids that you can yell and scream at them every day, and they're going to respond. So that's the job of a coach to get to know his players, and they're not going to care what you know until they know that you care. And I know you've heard that before, but it's so true. It's so true, and that's the believe in versus buy in theory. Once they believe in what we're doing, the rest is going to take care of itself. And I saw that last year at Brewer High School. They believed in what we were doing really quick, and you know the results kind of spoke for themselves. Everything took care of itself after that. Um, you know, I don't want them to buy in. I want them to believe in what we're doing. And I think that's the key when you take over a program that either hasn't achieved very well before for whatever reason. It's not always the previous coach's fault. Once again, when you win, everyone has a hand in winning, and when you lose, everyone's got a hand in losing. Now, the coach is the easy guy to blame. I get it. It comes with the territory, but sometimes in certain situations, it's not just the coach; it's the entire community. It's a failure of an entire community, which is why a team, underachieves.
Yeah. I'm sure I know I see that in I mean, even just looking in my state in Washington State, like, looking at the teams who consistently win that are not private schools, like, excluding them, like public schools, that the culture of that it's the entire community. Like, Sumner High
Right.
School just won state last year. It's the entire community coming together year after year, or versus another school that I won't name that, like, they never produce, really winning teams. And I can see in the culture of that community in that city that it's not strong in many ways. So yeah, I definitely hear that. I I also love that you're the belief over the buy-in. I think that's a huge part. But the thing that I want you to unpack a little bit is I was talking to somebody at the gym, ended up finding out that they're a behavioral psychologist at University of Washington, and he started unpacking. He's very big on specifically men and the confidence and the identity and all of that. So you talk about confidence, and yeah, you talk about confidence. What does real confidence actually look like? And if you want to focus on males on that, we can definitely do that.
It's almost I think you get confidence by your preparation. Um, what are you doing to prepare for that moment? How are you practicing? If all you're doing is hitting off a tee and doing underhand flips, you're not going to hit that guy that's throwing low to mid 90s. You're just not. You're not going to be prepared. So you could go into that situation with confidence, but it's really a false confidence. Um, the guys that'll get in there against the machine, I hate hitting off the machine. I hate hitting off the machine. Well, we don't have anybody that throws 90. I don't throw 90. I mean, I can move up to about 30 feet and throw it as hard as I can, but that's just not the same thing. But we can get a machine and set it up, and we can simulate velo that way and get in there and compete against the machine. Um, not being afraid to do those type of things. And when me or coach gets on the mound and we're going to throw BP to you from 35 feet away and it's going to be firm, you've got to get in there and compete. And I think that's the biggest thing is that I think a lot of kids are afraid to compete. They're just afraid to put it out there without a safety net and fail. Uh, and I think that's the biggest thing that I've done as a coach over the last 10 or 15 years differently than I did my first 15 years is that try to prepare practices that are going to create failure. I want them to feel failure in practice so we can address it and correct it and tell them this is what the game's going to be like. We try to make practice as game speed as possible. So um just having a day of leisurely fungo, feel good BP. That's not what one of our practices is going to look like. Um, we want to put them in uncomfortable situations in practice because that's what they're going to face in the game. And that's what you're going to face in real life. I mean, it's just, games and life is just not all unicorns and rainbows. And you're going to have to deal with adversity. And if you don't know how to deal with adversity, you're going to have a hard time being successful in whatever you choose to do, whether it's baseball, coaching, being a fitness consultant, um, selling real estate, selling houses. You're gonna have some adversity, uh, and being able to adapt to different situations. Uh, That's what we try to teach on a daily basis is being able to adapt and to compete no matter what. Even if deep down you know that guy's better than you, that doesn't matter. You're still going to get in there and compete. He still has the ball over the plate, and you've got the bat in your hand, so you can do damage if you're ready.
Yeah.
You can. So that's that. I think that's really important.
No, I love that, and it's like, yeah, you like, I like that last example too, is because even I mean, I think baseball is a prime example. If you're the pitcher going against, like a first team all league batter, yeah, he still messes up, 2/3 of the time, even with, because like average wise, like it's a 300, maybe a 400 if they're really good at high school level. But like, even then, there's still that room for, hey, you could still win this battle, and even if you don't win that battle, you can still learn from it, you can still grow from it, and continue to build yourself from that experience.
Yeah, I mean, and we had a situation last year in a playoff series. We were down to the number one ranked team in the state. We're down to our last three outs, and we're down by 2 runs. And they bring in their closer, and he's a low 90s guy. And I just told our hitters, I'm like, he has to throw it over the plate. So go up there and be ready and compete. And whatever happens, if you compete, whatever happens, we will both be able to live with it. We can all live with it whether we come from behind here or he mows us down. Just go in there and compete, and don't your goal's not to get a hit, and really not even get on base. Just compete, and let's just see what happens. And then we tied up, and we sent it to extra innings, and it was an epic game. Um, but I think that's the thing that we tell our hitters when they're facing elite pitching is, hey, that guy has to throw it over the plate. He can't take a knee. He can't run the clock out. He has to throw it over the plate.
Mhm.
So you go in there and you take your hacks, you dig in and you be ready to go and just compete. And whatever happens, we can live with the result if you're competing. If you're not competing, then I've got to find somebody that will compete. Even if it's a lesser talented person, they're going to get their chance to compete. Just compete. I wish I had a dollar every time I said the word compete. I'd be a rich man. I could retire for sure. But it's true. I mean, it's that simple. It's why a first round pick doesn't make it, and a 61st round pick like Mike Piazza is a Hall of Famer.
Mhm.
It's the will over the skill, and um, if you've never played, especially at a high level, then you just don't understand that. You haven't seen it. Um, Jose Altuve does not pass the eye test, and he plays with the Houston Astros, and I live in North Texas. I'm a Rangers fan, and when he's playing against the Rangers, I despise him. But as a coach, as a Ranger fan, I despise him. But as a coach, he's like, if he went on the Astros, he might be my favorite player, maybe of all time, just because of his size and his ability. It just doesn't match up.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't pass, the a scout's eye test, but doesn't matter. His will is probably off the charts. So, you can win with guys like that, and the Astros have, and I salute them 100%.
Yeah. I'm a Mariners fan, so Houston Astros, I'm like, I don't want them, but I can respect I can respect some of that.
Right.
Uh, oh yeah, and you guys are in the same division as well, so you guys feel the
Right.
pain. So,
Yes.
although you guys have been to a World Series much more recent than we have, which is never, but but I love the will over skill. I also, your example with that playoff game is so true to life too, because I think a lot of us, and you're putting it in perspective, like a lot of us, when we see that problem, whether it be a pitcher that we're up against, whether it be some sort of life thing that happened, we make it really big. We make it like there's this massive thing, and then we just narrow it down to, like you said, just compete. He has to throw it over the plate. Like it's as simple as that. Like it
Eh,
shrinks it's kind of like when we write something down, when we're afraid of something, or we're like, what's the worst can happen, we write it down and we're like, oh, it's not actually as bad as it could
Yeah.
be.
Right. Yeah. You, you know, the it's it's a funny line from a absolutely nutty movie, but, um, the Leslie Chow line from Hangover 2, "Well, did you die?" "I got shot." "Well, but did you die?" "No, you didn't." "Okay, so you struck out, but did you die?" "No." "So get over it, get over yourself, and get up on the rail with your teammates and cheer your teammates on and be a good teammate, and learn from that failure and understand how he got you out. That way, when you face that guy again, he may get you out again, but it's not gonna be the same way. If you let him get you out the second time, the same way he got you out the first time, then that's your fault. That's on you.
Mhm.
Make an adjustment. Make an
Yeah.
adjustment.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So I know we're running a little later, and so I want to hit with one final question for you. Is like your final advice to athletes who really are chasing the dream. They love baseball and they want to play college or pro ball. Like, what is your greatest piece of advice to give them that best shot?
Um, put as much time in the weight room as you do on the field and in the cage. Maybe even, if not more. Because the stronger the athlete, the better the athlete. You just turn on a big league game, turn on an MLB game, and look at the size of these guys. Um, and it doesn't matter. You can look at a game, watch a game in 2025. You can watch a game in 1995 or 1975. Now, 1975 weights weren't as big a deal as they are now, but those guys still looked athletic. And if you watch an old game from 50 years ago and watch how those guys move, they're athletic. They're really athletic. Now they don't have gym bodies, but they're so athletic. And I think that's the thing that's never changed and it's never going to change about baseball is you need baseball skill, but like we've got good baseball players, we try to make them better athletes. Um and I can go get the greatest athlete in the school and put him on the baseball field. But if he didn't have any baseball ability, he's not going to be successful. He'll just be a great athlete. So, we're looking for baseball. I'm always looking for a baseball player that's that that is athletic or that we can make more athletic. And that's probably my MLB scout inside of me talking to, when I go watch a kid. Um, Probably one of the first kids that I would say I'm not going to say I discovered him, but I know I wrote the first report when I was scouting with the Mariners on him was Trent Grisham,
Mhm.
and I saw him when he was 15 years old, and he just stood out, not because of his baseball ability, but his athletic ability stood out, and I immediately started writing notes down on how he moved, and I wrote up a report for the area supervisor, and I made a phone call to a Division I coach, and he ended up signing with them. Um, then he was drafted out of high school and signed professionally. But you know, his ability, his ability to hit and throw were eye popping. But it was the way he was moving in the outfield, the way he moved in the batter's box, how he moved on the bases, his baseball movements, and that's a word that I use a lot with our freshmen, is your baseball movements, how you move to field the ground ball, how you move to field the fly ball. Is it athletic? Is it, and I hate this word, but is it twitchy? Uh, I'm not a big fan of that word. I'd rather use at I like the athletic term better. What do your baseball movements look like? That's what a scout, that's what a college coach that's out there on the recruiting trail, that's what they're looking for. How are you moving on the field? Do you move efficiently? That's the number one thing I would tell a young kid coming up. And I get them on Twitter. They'll follow me on Twitter and ask for advice. And the first thing I tell them is get stronger and get more athletic, because that's going to help everything you do in baseball. It's going to help you as a runner. It's going to help you as a hitter. It's going to help you as a thrower. Uh, is to get stronger, get more athletic, um, get more flexible. The farther you can pull that rubber band back, when you let go of it, the farther it's going to fly. So, um, I think that's the number one thing, because that's something that I look back on as a player, and weights were not a big deal. It wasn't. I think we may have lifted weights 4 weeks the entire year. If I think if I can go back and change, if I can have a do over, I'd be in the weight room. I'd live in the weight room.
Mm,
I'd live in the weight room when I was in high school.
mm.
That would probably fix a lot of my problems as an athlete when I
Mhm.
was growing up. Is just to be stronger
Yeah.
for sure.
One and I like that you highlight, you stronger, but then you're like, but also baseball movement. You want to be able to move. You're not training to be a bodybuilder. You're training still to be an
Right,
athlete. And so, yeah, I think
right.
that's
So like
yeah.
squat max doesn't equate to 90-mile-an-hour fastball, because if it did, I'd go get our offensive line at our high school, because they can all squat, you know, 400 or 500 pounds, but they're not all going to get on the mound and throw 90 miles an hour. They're just not. So, like what you max doesn't matter to me. I've never had a college baseball coach ask me, "Hey, how much is that kid max? Well, what's his squat max? What's his bench max?" Never had that asked. So, um, get in the weight room, move the weight, move it efficiently. Um, and that's what I tell our kids. I don't care how much you lift. I care that I care about your technique and that you're moving it the right way. If you're moving it the right way and it gets easier, well, then let's add weight. I mean, it's not rocket science. And you keep adding weight, you're getting stronger.
Yeah.
So I think that's really important. It's the
Yeah.
most important thing.
Yeah. Well, and I also like the fact that you mentioned that in general is, again, the other podcast I had today was with a recruiting coach, and he talked about how he doesn't even want to work with kids on their recruiting until at least sophomore year. And his advice to freshmen was get bigger, get stronger, like get in the weight room, do that kind of stuff so that you can physically look the part, and it's going to make it a lot easier for you to do the rest if you can actually move and carry that weight well.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't go to a college camp and don't go to a showcase if you're going to throw the ball across the infield, 74 miles an hour, because you're not gaining exposure. You're exposing yourself as a non prospect.
Mm.
Um, you know, you go to these camps or you go to a showcase and they have you hit a ball off the tee. Well, if you're hitting the ball off the tee 75 miles an hour, that ball's not going anywhere. Um, don't go to one of those things if you're not hitting the ball off the tee 90 miles an hour.
Yeah.
So how are you going to build up that bat speed? Well, you're going to start that in the weight room. Um, and don't it, go into a showcase, go into a camp, and you don't pass the eye test. You don't have to be 6'5". You can be 5'4", but let's get rocked up a little bit. Let's get stronger.
Yeah. Dude, there were so many good nuggets from this. Like a lot of times when I'm in a podcast, I'm thinking about like, oh yeah, like clips that will be posted, but I'm also like, there's probably a bajillion things from this that could be posted, number one, as a short video, but also as a like even just you have so many quick little quotes or phrases or whatever that I think really can resonate with athletes if they actually like think about it more. And so, I
Sure.
really, really appreciate you hopping on and sharing all this
No
wisdom.
problem. No problem. Anytime.
Yeah,
Anytime.
of course. Well, listeners, again, this is another one of those that you want to go back and listen to. You want to, really reflect on some of these things and be like, okay, what are you missing? Like, what is something that you can look at yourself and be like, what am I missing, and how can I fix that? If it's the weight room, if it's the will, if it's the off the field preparation, whatever it is, like really tap into that. And then Oh, sorry, I almost forgot. Art, what's the best way if athletes want to reach out and ask questions or anything like that? What's the easiest way to reach you?
Twitter
Okay,
at Coach Sonato 29.
perfect.
You message me and I will respond for sure.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, yeah, and that's in the show notes in the caption below. So check that out. And athletes, as always, keep striving for greatness.